Welcome aboard. This video is intended to accompany your class notes in business communication class for Chapter 10 on persuasive and sales messages. I think it's helpful to start out with just a basic introduction to what persuasion is, or maybe better is a definition of that. Sometimes we use terms and we take it for granted that people know what we're talking about. Persuasion is the ability to use argument or discussion in attempting to change an individual's beliefs or actions. And so it's important to distinguish this, for instance, between simply the conveying of a message or information, whether it's good news or bad news. Although, of course, in persuasion, we'll see for the most part, we will need to build a case for what we're going to ask the receiver to do or to believe or to understand, so that for the most part, persuasive messages are going to follow the indirect approach, the same or similar to what we used for negative messages. Again, it's important to note that we're trying to get someone to do something, to change their behavior, or to believe something, or to accept something as, let's say, authoritative. Either way, we're trying to change their thinking or their behavior. Some effective persuasion techniques include these. Oops, got a little ahead of myself. Establish credibility. That is, the receiver needs to understand that when you tell them something that you're believable. That's what credibility means, believability. That it's authoritative, that you're the facts. If you're conveying facts, that they are in fact factual or correct or true. Make a reasonable and precise request. Very often it seems like when it comes to, for instance, asking for donations for a charitable organization, it's too often left up for grabs for the receiver or the donee to decide how much they can give. The more you understand as a speaker or as the sender of a message, the communicator, what it is you want them to do. In the case of a donation, for instance, how much you want them to give, the easier it is, or let's say the more effective your message is going to be, because you're thinking then in terms of how to convince that person to give that amount of money. And so your arguments are going to be, let's say, more fine-tuned than they would be if you're just trying to get them to give something in general or to give a smaller or different amount. Tie facts to benefits. It's always important to remember the you view. We should take the you view in any type of communication. And when you can show how a particular action or change in the way of thinking is going to help the receiver, then you're going to be able to craft a message that's more effective and powerful. Recognize the power of loss. It's what in economics we call the endowment effect. I think in class I mentioned somebody has a coffee cup, for instance, that they got at a special event. Maybe it's one that was given to them by an important person. That means something to that person, to the person who possesses it, and we tend to more highly value, strange as it may seem, things that we have than things that we don't have. You see that oftentimes when it comes time for someone to sell a car that maybe means a lot to them, or a house, because they know how much, how many good memories go with that house and the great events that took place. But those items, of course, don't know that you own them. And the person who's probably looking to buy the house doesn't care how much care you put into, how much you care about that car, how many good memories are associated with the house. But recognize the power of loss. And when it comes to persuading someone, it may be a deadline, that if they miss that deadline, they'll miss out on a discount or the opportunity, for instance, for a donation, for the donation to be matched by some other donor. Expect and overcome resistance. Anticipate what the arguments are going to be, or what the opposition, the obstacles to that person doing what you want or believing what you want them to believe, and anticipate that. Share solutions and compromise. That is, be ready to give a little as well as to ask for something. Offer options when you can. The importance of tone. Avoid sounding preachy or parental, like you're lording it over someone, or you have information that they don't have, and you're somehow let's say the purveyor, the giver of all, the possessor of all knowledge. Be careful about the tone, the way that you come across. Certainly don't be be careful about being overly pushy or persuasive, because some people certainly will react negatively to that. Don't pull rank. This is something in class I mentioned. Let's say you're the boss and you want people to participate in a blood drive, or maybe to a volunteer event on a given Saturday. What you don't want to do is to imply that they're going to wish they had. You're the boss, you're asking them to volunteer. You need to be careful about those sorts of things. Don't pull rank. Some years ago I remember there was a student at a university I was at, and they did not have a women's soccer program at the time, but one of the young ladies interested in helping to form one was, her parents were fairly well off. I think her family was, maybe her father or uncle, someone was a board member. And as they were approaching me about helping them to get organized, and then this young lady brought up the fact that maybe if they knew that my father was such and such, or my uncle was whatever, had this money, that maybe that would help. And I just told her, I said, you don't want to play that card too often. You certainly don't want to make threats or imply, put pressure on people that. You don't want to pull rank. You don't want to play that card unless it's really, unless you're doing it knowing what the implications might be. So be careful about those things. Avoid making threats, of course. When persuading upward, that is, if you're persuading your boss, soften your words. Be aware that there are differences in rank and power. There's a power of position your boss has that you don't. So be aware of that. Be enthusiastic. Enthusiastic can be very contagious, and in fact, if you're not enthusiastic about what it is that you're selling, or what it is you are, selling in terms of even trying to get people to donate or to participate in something, it's going to be harder to convince others to give up their time and their effort and certainly their money. Be positive, be likable. I said in class, this is something I think a lot of Faulkner students, in my view, have as an advantage. You, for the most part, you like other people, and you want to be an effective member of a team, and you know that means putting the other person's, or at least being considerate and thinking about the other person and their needs. You'll be surprised. You'll be shocked. Some of you, I hope you're shocked, because I hope it's not something that you take as a matter of course, to find some people that you deal with who simply don't really care what other people think about them. And that's a shame, I believe. You don't want to live your life in such a way that your actions are ruled, by what others might think of you. But if you aspire to be a leader, if you aspire to be someone who's influential, then you do care what others think about you. You want them to believe you are someone, for instance, of integrity, and that you're someone who cares, you're polite, you're well-mannered, and that you're the kind of person who will put others' needs above your own when that's necessary. So you want to be likable, and I think, again, I want to encourage you to develop those, or enhance the talents, the skills, the inclinations you already, I think most of you already possess, to be that kind of person. What does success look like? This is a phrase I use a lot in your life. What does success look like for you? But in communication, specifically, I say with any given communication, you're communicating with a purpose. You've either got some good news to convey, you've got some bad news to convey, you've got a persuasive message, something to convince others of. Those are the three types of messages we've talked about in business. And so think about what your purpose is in this message. What do you want the receiver to do or to think? Keep in mind, with persuasion, we want them to change their thinking, or we want them to change their behavior. And that's what the persuasion, the end result of this persuasive activity is about. Anticipating their reaction. How are they going to respond? Are they going to be really open to this opportunity? Are they going to be very reluctant? So does the receiver need to be persuaded? And of course, also thinking in terms of what sort of evidence, what sort of facts, what sort of approach is best for them. Some people, if they're more open to the persuasion, if it's not going to take much, you can be a bit more direct. But some people, if they're going to be harder to persuade, you'll need to work in more gradually. And you'll need to know what sorts of information, what facts, what angles in particular will be most effective with this, with a particular person. And that leads us to adapting to the audience. How can you adapt your message to appeal to this receiver? You've got to know what success looks like and also know your audience in order to be able to craft, I like that term, to craft the message, to design it in such a way that it achieves the end result, that it is successful. Researching data, what information do you need? Again, some people are going to be much more driven by, say, the anecdotes, the emotional side of things. This a story about a child in need, something like that. Some people are going to be more driven by the facts of a particular situation and what your product or your organization will do in relieving a problem. Organizing data, which strategy is best, direct or indirect? And there is a strategy for persuasive messages. It's not unique to this textbook, but it's one that the author uses. It's called the AIRA or AIRA strategy: gain attention, build interest, reduce resistance, and motivate action. We're going to look at each of these aspects of this approach in turn here. First of all, gaining attention. In requesting favors, begin with a compliment, unexpected fact, stimulating question, reader benefit, a summary of the problem, or just a candid, that is an open plea for help, again depending, but something that's going to get their attention. If you don't get their attention right off, if you don't draw them in some way, then, well, you're just not going to be successful. They're going to trash that email, or they're going to wad up that letter, or whatever it might be. For claims, this is where someone, let's say, is where you are making a claim, say, to get reimbursement for something, or credit to your account, to be able to return a product or whatever. Consider opening with a review of action you've taken to resolve the problem. This is particularly the case if you are sort of going, seem to be by your appeal going over someone else's head. You may be leaving a phone message. You may be approaching someone. Let's say that you've gone to customer service and you've gone to that person's supervisor and still haven't gotten what you believe to be a fair hearing, or let's say the redress that you think you deserve. And so you've asked, who's the next person? They've given you an email address or a person's name and phone number. And so it certainly is helpful in those situations if you can very clearly and concisely explain what you have done, who you have talked to. And because if you don't do that early on, probably this person, again, who is up the chain a bit above customer care, those first few people, if they don't see that you've already done a few things, they'll simply say, oh, well, like this person's not, apparently they started at the wrong place, and they'll send you back to square one to speak with someone else. So it's a good idea to explain what you've done. It shows that of the person that you're serious and persistent. And also, if you've got the facts, you've kept dates and names and things like that, it will certainly give the impression that you're more a person to be reckoned with. You're more serious and well organized, and give the impression that your claim probably has more validity than, say, the average one where someone is just, seems to be just starting or complaining about something. The next stage is building interest. Prove the accuracy and merit of your request with facts, figures, expert opinion, examples, and details. Some of this is going to be based on, what it is that you think appeals to this person that you're contacting. Avoid sounding high-pressured, angry, or emotional. Certainly, if you do that, you will come across as someone maybe who simply won't be pleased no matter what, or someone who is irrational and can't really be reasoned with. So be careful about that. Suggest direct and indirect benefits for the receiver. A direct benefit, for instance, in this case, you're apparently trying to get someone to come speak to a group. If you accept our invitation to speak, you'll have an audience of 50 potential customers for your products. See, there's an automatic, or let's say a short-term financial benefit for participating in this event. The indirect benefit, your appearance would prove your professionalism and make us grateful for your willingness to give something back to our field. In this case, the indirect benefit is something that is maybe further down the road, or something less tangible in the present. Let's go to the next one.